So I had a friend for the longest time who was trying to get me to play indie games. And honestly, that was one of the best things that I could ever decide to do. AAA games here recently have kind of been stale and very samey. And what I mean by that is it's been pretty safe. For the most part, we're getting sequels, we're getting remakes, and one of the biggest trends in gaming recently, which I don't exactly agree with, is live service games, which I think everybody knows how those have kind of gone. I mean, just look at Concord and Suicide Squad, complete failures. But every now and then we get a little treat from studios. Like we get Hogwarts, we get Black Myth, we get Elden Ring. So there is exceptions to that rule, of course, like anything. But where I find the most innovation and creativeness from games is gotta be indies. Sure, from the time I've started branching out, I've only played a few of them. Some of them include Cult of the Lamb, What Remains of Edith Finch, so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean that I don't try to look out for indies. There's so many games on my radar that I've been trying to play that I just haven't gotten around to all of them. But one of them I've been keeping my eye on for quite some time is the Plucky Squire. Now, ever since this game was announced, I was kind of looking at it and anticipating that it would be in a showcase or something. And until recently, when I came home from work, I loaded up YouTube and I was looking at Skill Up's channel and stuff because I just like to look at games to get some ideas. And behold, he's got an impressions video for Plucky Squire along with the announced release date of the game. So when I saw that, I added it to my list of games to eventually play, and that's what we're doing today. I finally sat down. I played over it throughout the past weekend or so, and I wanted to talk about it just because I don't think a lot of indies get too much love. There's some that kind of go mainstream, but for the most part, indies are kind of low under the radar, and I don't think your average gamer goes to play them, especially with this game being on PlayStation Plus. And I don't know about Game Pass. I heard from a friend of mine that it was on Game Pass, but I'm not quite sure. But since most people have those subscriptions, why not check it out? So with most titles, I like to begin with the story, especially since this is a newer title. We aren't going to be going into spoilers a whole lot. I will talk about the first 25% of the game. I like to give you guys an idea of the story. And so in this game, you start off as a hero in a children's storybook, and your name is Ja. Now, Ja is kind of like Link from Legend of Zelda. He gives you very same kind of vibes. And as you go throughout the first chapter, so you're kind of playing through the storybook, it's a very basic 2D action game. But then when you get past the first chapter or so, you get to the main villain. I think his name is Humpgrep. He reveals that, big surprise, you're in a storybook. And so he uses magic. He casts you out of the storybook, which is where you get to the 3D aspect of the game. And throughout there, you go through the 3D world and you make your way back to the book. You learn how to get back into the book, and you go on an adventure with friends. And your whole point of this game is to defeat Humpgrep before he changes the ending of the book. Now, there's some other story stuff, but that's the very basic minimum that I think I should give you all. Now, I will say the story is pretty simple, like very simple. You can kind of predict where it's going, but it's a good little like children's story. And with that being said, it's easy to follow. So it's a very good like beginner game. Like if you want to get like a friend into a game, or let's say you're an adult and you're trying to get like your little brother or like a family member or somebody into games, I think that this would be a very good game to get into. And with the story like setup, it makes sense to use the mechanics of the 3D and the 2D, which I really like. Like I like when games integrate gameplay mechanics with the story. So I thought that was very well done. Now let's go on to gameplay. We're gonna break this down into the four main aspects. Those aspects being 2D, 3D, puzzles, and then some little issues and gripes with this game, as I do have some, but it's not that many. So let's begin with 2D, of course. Now, this is something you get introduced to almost right away in the game. That is, like, combat-wise, it's similar to something like Binding of Isaac, Cult of the Lamb, or like early Zelda games. It's very much a kind of like 2D dungeon crawler kind of feel to it. Each page kind of feels like you're going to a next set of dungeon, because each page can only have so much on it. You start out with the game with a basic dodge roll and an attack, and as you're playing the game, you'll find these little light bulb things. They'll drop from creatures that you kill, or if you destroy a bush or hit a tree or something, they'll usually come from those, and that'll allow you to buy upgrades for your weapon. Now you can upgrade your damage, or you can buy new moves. For example, you have like a ground slam that you could buy, a spin attack, a sword throw. These kind of add gameplay variety to the game. There aren't too many. This game is very short, I will say. It's only about 8 hours for a playthrough, so they don't give you a whole lot. Like, you can upgrade your basic damage and you can do this and that, but when it comes to like upgrades, there's not many, which is, I don't want to say it's a negative, because it doesn't feel like you get enough light bulbs to like bend more than what the game offers. You can get the extra attacks and upgrade everything, and that's about as much as you can do in a single playthrough. But these new moves do add more variety to 2D and 3D. You can use these moves in both. And then as you're going through the book, they have these really cool cutscenes. It's not exactly like a storybook, like it almost plays out like a 2D cartoon or a movie. And then you have this cool little wizard dude who's narrating it. I will say some of the humor that gets put into the story, whatever, it's kind of it's a little dry, and it's the same humor throughout. So after a while, it kind of don't hit the same. But I still think that now when it goes on to 3D, I think this is where things get more interesting. I don't think we've ever seen a game where it starts mixing these aspects like this. So after you get kicked out of the book, you have to go back to the book and start seeing these green little portals. And they're called meta portals, I believe. They gave the name for them, and then they don't really ever mention them again. And this allows you to go between 2D and 3D. And it's not always just between the real world and the book. For instance, when you're out in the real world, there's a certain chapter where you can like go on these like mugs that have some drawing on them, and you can go on them and you'll have to collect some things and this and that. So it's not always just the storybook you're going to. Sometimes you have to switch between them to complete some puzzles and this and that. And it just adds a lot of variety. Like, it makes the game feel very alive. Because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes the color palette on the book can kind of get stale. You're in there for quite some time for a while. So I think that this is kind of the way that they fix that issue of it feeling samey and you playing like the same thing over and over and over, which I know some people don't mind, but I did feel like some points the storybook would kind of get a little stale, little run down, like kind of almost getting bored, and then it would let you go out in 3D and do a chapter in 3D. I'm like, okay, I'm back into this, let's keep going. Now, combat in 3D, you don't get to do a whole lot. From what I will say, it kind of feels like a mini action game, something akin to like Breath of the Wild. There's not much to say on 3D combat in this game. You don't get to do it a whole lot. A lot of what you're doing in 3D is like puzzle mechanic stuff, but at the same time, the 3D world also allows a lot of innovation. So not just with the missions themselves, but what you can do to the book. There's this whole mission where you get to have a jetpack and you get to fly throughout the 3D world. You have to light these candles, you have to do this and that. But then it also asks for some innovation. Like, you can change pages in the book, and sometimes you have to go back in the book, get something and go forward, or you have to tilt the page and it'll knock something over or move something. And I always liked that little stuff in this game. It felt very different to anything else I've really played, but there was just throwing enough stuff at you to keep it from going stale, which I never thought I would really say for an 8-hour game. You know, they just keep throwing stuff at you, and some of it is like very innovative. Like in the beginning of the game, when you're in the 2D world, you get to box this honey badger, which is really cool. It's like an old kind of style game. Or you get to go on a mug and you kind of get to do a twin stick shooter thing. There's just little cool moments like that that really make the game feel different. Now, where I kind of have some issues with this game is first starting with puzzles. A lot of these chapters are solved by puzzles, which isn't the problem I have actually. I actually think puzzles are good, and a lot of these are pretty good. Like, a lot of them are kind of easy. Some of them are like super easy. Like, I fucking flew by it. Enough that a child could do. But it got to the point where like some points later, I was just getting frustrated and I just felt stupid, like I was a dumbass. And so I had to go like watch a YouTube video, and then I felt really dumb. Like, some stuff in just the puzzles and everything aren't very clear. There's a little wizard to help you, but in some of these more complex puzzles, it doesn't really help. Like, it'll just give you like a simple phrase like, oh, freeze this guy, but you freeze the guy and you're trying to mess around with other stuff and it's just not completing. And then my second kind of gripe with this game, I did have some issues. They weren't exactly performance issues. They're more like bugs. And I experienced quite a few, actually. I can't remember a game in recent memory that I really experienced bugs in, because I didn't play that dog shit Ubisoft Star Wars Outlaws game. I already knew from watching the trailers that I was not fucking picking that up. Most of them were kind of like tiny inconveniences. I'll start playing some of them on the screen here so that you guys can kind of see. But for some of them, I just had to exit my game. I had my game crash one time. there was like an instance where like I would do something and then I would just get stuck and then the portal would not pop out and I had to just completely leave the game, get back in, and then try and do it again. And if I messed it up again, I had to keep doing it, and I had to do it for like 4 or 5 times for one of the puzzles. So normally I wouldn't say this is a gripe. It's just an issues that they need to fix, but it was happening so frequently and the game is so short that it kind of did bring the game down for me for a notch. So with kind of some ending thoughts here, I did enjoy what I played. It just felt like a fun, innocent action kind of adventure game. Really cool concepts here. Like the 2D and the 3D was used very well. It threw in some like other like genre things. It's a very unique game, and I would say it's very good for you to get somebody into gaming, because sure, it's got a simple story, the combat is very simple and this and that, but if you're just a beginning gamer or like you want to get a sibling or somebody into gaming, you know, this is a phenomenal option. And even if you've played games for a long time, I would say branch out to indies. Indies are usually where I find a lot of inspiration, and sometimes you have some bad ones, but for the most part, I haven't played a bad indie really yet. And of course, like I said at the beginning, it's on PlayStation Plus. So, I mean, what's really stopping you from trying? Especially when they get these bugs and stuff patched, which I will leave a comment when it's kind of patched. I mean, other than that, there's not really a whole lot of gripes. If you're smarter than me, I bet you could figure out the puzzles. I eventually figured out the puzzles. I only had to watch a YouTube video on one, and then the other one I kind of started looking into. I felt so stupid once I completed it. It was simple, but the way that the wizard was wording it and the way that the things were kind of arranged, it didn't seem like that was supposed to be the answer, but it was. But yeah, this has been Sir UD. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and you know, if you enjoy this video, please share it along with friends. That would really help me out a lot. And you know, go try some indies and stuff. Go give some indie developers love. This has been Sir UD, and I'll see you all later. Peace.